This video will not feature an amateur video essayist rambling about Satanist qualities of 343 Industries or Halo Studios. If that's a video you want, please search elsewhere. This video will instead cover the importance of something like a Halo Combat Evolved remake, and why the apparent decisions of what we have seen thus far are, in my opinion, dooming it to fail. If not as a video game, then certainly as a remake. Explained, of course, by an amateur video essayist. Yours truly. There are few games as pioneering and as influential as a game like Halo. Fewer still have a legacy that follows, which cements the influence of a franchise on gaming as a whole. So much so that it has been profusely copied or competed with in ways you wouldn't even bat an eye at in the current day. Did you know almost every first-person shooter controller control scheme is based off of Halo? So much so that the franchise itself has gone through hoops and hurdles trying to copy dust and echoes of its past, meshed together with new, or debatably new, elements in an attempt to create something fresh and exciting, yet managing to forget the magic of its predecessors, in some ways more and more with each passing title. Now to most, those motes of magic are but memory, fleeting, wistful, bittersweet, and remaining in the past. There was a time when Halo was synonymous with the word gamer, or other words of that root family. There was a time, at least here in the States, when Halo was about as well known as the name Mario. There was a time when Halo dominated all of gaming and took the world by storm, ruling with an almost benevolent grip on the industry that forced competition to improve in order to dethrone it. Sales were so high that press coverage around video games became more common, much closer to what it is today.
Rewrite retail history.
Video game is expected to have bigger first-day revenues than any movie has ever had an opening day at the box office.
Biggest retail launch in entertainment history.
Dozens of grown men and probably about 3 women have crawled out of their parents' basements tonight to be first in line to buy the new video game Halo 2.
Video gamers across the country are anxiously awaiting the midnight release of a game called Halo 2.
45 minutes and counting for Halo 2 to go on sale.
The line right now is probably about 100 yards long.
It is the most anticipated game in entertainment history.
Companies around the world were suddenly looking and suddenly curious about the potential of the upcoming fiscal years for video games. You have Halo in great part to thank for corporations taking video games a bit more seriously, at least financially. By the millions were people playing at home, alone, or with friends, on LAN, or eventually through online services, the party social or competitive lobbies of their favorite Halo titles, engaging in never-before-seen experiences, in a fashion which would also never be seen again beyond the franchise. Some of these parties drew people in droves, lasting all through the night until the pizza boxes were empty, the beer or soda had been drained, and nobody was talking because it was 5 in the morning and nobody had the capacity to speak anymore. Truly, there is a reason behind the name Combat Evolved, and it definitely wasn't because Microsoft was worried Halo alone wouldn't stick out. Indeed, Halo manifested a great many bonds between people who would otherwise never meet. It also broke a few among friends who couldn't quite handle each other in a competitive setting. It forged kinships and memorable moments naturally. It fostered rivalry and contributed a sandbox for those looking to indulge in their creativity, using what the game offered to expand past even that. But most importantly for this video, it proved to the world that first-person shooters could tell stories, and inspired a numerous variety of people the potential of what can be conveyed through an interactive experience, disguised as what we would probably now call a boomer McShooter. Halo Combat Evolved was the first experience crafted for a franchise that would push this remarkable and at the time unique trait again and again, all while pushing other, arguably equal groundbreaking qualities, pioneering them for all video games. Everything mentioned prior stems back to this one game, this one video game whose influence on the vast quantities of titles sharing its genre looms over like a benign overcast, whom we can only assume is displeased that the very caretakers in this franchise have chosen to disrespect it in favor of something new and sorely lacking creative thought. Halo Combat Evolved deserves respect for all that it achieved and all that it offers even now, though it demands none in order for one to experience and then bear its gifts. Perhaps it is up to the player to discern whether those demands are necessary. It is for that reason that Halo Campaign Evolved is setting itself up for a failure that, were it even successful in sales, would likely kill new interests in the series through the sheer jarringness that the developers are in no agreement on what this thing of a project should even be. That isn't to say, however, that the remake is bound to be received by no one. It may in fact, and will to some extent as a guarantee, bring a new generation of attention from a sector of gamers Halo has not yet reached. These fresh eyes will not be able to determine why a great many issues plagued their experience, or rather, what was absent. They will not experience a vast chunk of the potential us players did who enjoyed the original games as they were. They will not know any at all the nuances that make Halo Combat Evolved leave a great many lasting impressions with you the way the iconic game does. They will not know what they missed, to put it simply. And given the nature of people and the internet, it will cause even more arguments, diluting the general understanding of what makes Halo phenomenal, even when it was once upon a time so universally agreed upon. This is, of course, not the fault of the audience, but rather the incompetence of the developers paying their so-called respects to the title from 2001 that started it all and is for the moment furnishing their careers. A blatant misunderstanding of Halo's gameplay, its level design, and its storytelling, instead of drawing people to a beloved game for the reasons why it was so special in the first place. Halo Studios is drawing people to a strange, self-contradictory video game experience, which wants to look and play as fresh as modern-day Halo, and appeal to the idea we're receiving a faithful remake for the Halo of old. Indeed, what a fresh new take we've received. The fact that casuals and people who have not played Combat Evolved are banning for what we have seen in the trailer and gameplay reveal as good is, I believe, concerning. Since I have had the misfortune of having debates with one or two of these people in person, I shall share my takeaways in this segment. A worthy reminder of the kind of arguments made by people who think they know Halo or think what they believe is common sense are about the redesigns of character models. Let us first start with something as small, or perhaps not so small, as the iconic Halo Elites. We will get to the Master Chief design later, just you wait. But first, please look now upon your screen. This is an Elite, specifically an Elite Miner from Combat Evolved. This is the design Bungie worked with for many months and is the design they shipped the game with. I like them a lot. They're sleek, tall and slender and have an intimidating aura about them. They are the basis from which all the future Elites are formed. Here is a page of all those iterations. I do recommend that you try to ignore 4 and 5. And this is the remake's redesign. Here is a comparison of the two. You'll notice something familiar about the remake's approach to certain designs such as this one. Designs which, many have pointed out already, look flipped from Halo Infinite. Here is an Elite Zealot from Halo Infinite, and here is a Zealot from the gameplay reveal. Notice the similarities? Notice the striking resemblance these two share, almost as if they're from the same game, which therein lies the issue. Halo Combat Evolved and Halo Infinite are not the same game. And while yes, many people, myself included, rather like the designs of the enemies from Halo Infinite, and don't think they're the worst thing to slap onto a classic Halo title, we would be straying far from the point. The point is that rather than making a redesign faithful to Halo Combat Evolved, the design from another Halo title has been lifted and photoshopped into the CE Elite's place. In essence, this is yet another instance of porting the most recent Halo title's models onto an existing game's enemy type, regardless of art direction. What's sad is that this is not the first time, and specifically not the first time for Combat Evolved to suffer from this misrepresentation. In Combat Evolved's case, this is take 2, and no, the lesson was not learned back in 2011 with CE Anniversary. It's not quite as disgusting as Halo Reach Elites visually replacing the Combat Evolved Elites, only this time we actually do have the Halo Reach AI in place of our Combat Evolved remake of the Combat Evolved enemy behavior. Yes, you heard that right. Halo Reach AI in a Combat Evolved remake. Yes, I'm quite aware it was done to help keep the Halo feel, quote-unquote, of the gameplay. But honestly, God help us all. What a charming concoction of Frankenstein elements of varying Halo games not at all meant to represent the cesspool of disrespect thrown at their father title. But that is, of course, the secondary function they serve, beyond the primary function of approximating what a Halo game is supposed to be, and failing rather miserably. And to all the people I've argued with, specifically those 1 or 2 in particular, this is no personal attack. If indeed you cared in any way, shape, or form charm about continuity, since that is the default argument for retarded positions you want to fight for, after a single impulse that says you should and justified by the first thought that happens to pop into your head, no matter how considerably nonsensical, then you too should be as upset about the Halo Infinite design of the elite being in this remake as I am, if but for alternate reasons. That being, would it not be the case that the Halo Reach design would be more appropriate, given the fact that Halo Infinite takes place many years in the future beyond Comet Evolved, whereas Comet Evolved, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not, I've already checked, takes place a mere few months after Halo Reach. It is okay to accept that the devs were lazy with this one, that they looked at Halo Infinite's design of the elites, said, close enough, and slapped it on their project and called it a day. It is not okay to call it a well thought out artistic decision that pays respects to its source material and is a decision that helps spruce up the continuity of the Halo universe, when all it really does is save the devs time so they can continue to work on adding more Master Chief Soda skins. Speaking of the Big Chief, what's going on with his armor in this remake? What is with modern day society's aversion to the color green? Green means good. I like good. Good is the color of trees. Trees give us air and firewood and the occasional insurance claim. We seem to keep encountering instances of modern adaptations or redesigns of pre-existing green things, or at least the more vibrant ones, and having their saturation sucked out of the very hues that make them. I have an explanation for why this keeps happening, a potential and unproven theory, no less. This appears for a more gritty and edgy vibe, the please God take me seriously, I know guns, ammo types, and military jargon and never served in the military seriousness, which classic Halo does not support because it never needed such heavy compensation for lame storytelling, and I'd be willing to go as far as calling you a fool if you think otherwise. When I say classic, I mean the original trilogy. Why can't we have shiny metallic green on our hero in our sci-fi military action adventure with undertones of hope? Why is it so fucking dark? The alleged TV show did this and it looked ugly then and it looks ugly now. It was bright green before. Now someone pissed on it. Are we attempting to copy the upcoming Lanterns TV show, known for its iconic use of the color green in its adaptation of the Green Lanterns, who look like this? Ironically, the green is not only missing from the suit, but from the title as well. I know you can't just lift the Halo Infinite Master Chief design for this one, but at least lift the green color and make it shinier. Surely this one is easier to tweak than fixing the elites, as ideally all you would need to do is mess with the texture a little until it closer resembles the original, but it wouldn't be a modern day reimagining of old things without the hallucination of ideas that weren't present prior. Speaking of hallucinating ideas, look no further than the ability to press a button, have your arm swing at your sides while your pistol is out, and gain a 25 to 50 something % boost to your movement speed. If you are familiar with this debate, then you know sprint is without a doubt the most actively argued about mechanic in Halo's history, or at least it was, as I've seen much less debate about it in recent memory since Halo Infinite, only sparking some by this campaign evolved reveal. I'm led to conclude most players against it have simply given up in favor of accepting that it's likely never to leave us, now that it has been a core mechanic since Halo 4 and arguably Reach. Though even if you exclude Reach, the ability has been with the franchise for longer than the franchise has been without it. Sprint is a complicated topic with many nuances. My take doesn't exactly matter, but in case you think I'm biased, I personally am of the opinion that sprint can exist in Halo so long as it is integrated well with the pacing of gameplay, be it through the sandbox of weapons and level design, and how they coexist. Bland answer, I know. I've simply had fun both with and without the feature of sprint. Sprint, as a mechanic, is commonly seen as a tool to make Halo sweatier, more competitive, and in the past, more like Call of Duty. It serves as making gameplay feel more urgent, which suits certain people's tastes, though it is somewhat frequently argued that that number is fewer than what Halo appealed to without sprint as a whole. The basic function of traversing a greater distance in a shorter period of time allows for easier opportunities to dodge projectiles, reposition, or outright avoid combat with enemies you don't want to engage. And it's when you put sprint in a Halo game that didn't have it to begin with, do all these nuances get forcibly thrown out the window with a violent crash. Halo Combat Evolved factually did not ship with Sprint back in 2001. Halo players did not see Sprint until 2010. Thus, it cannot be argued that Bungie anticipated that Sprint might show up in their original title. There is definitely no evidence to suggest that they were planning on doing it themselves. Ergo, the first Halo game was not designed with Sprint in mind. Ergo, including Sprint in a game which was not designed with it in mind while leaving much of the level design intact and unchanged is a problem. Furthermore, because certain aspects of the levels have been altered, as we have seen by example in the Silent Cartographer, to make area traversal easier, we are foundationally reducing the threat on all fronts of any enemy which we can now simply run past. And while yes, someone might say that Halo Reach AI is better suited to stopping players with the ability to sprint because Sprint was present in Halo Reach and Bungie was aware of that fact, it does not grant much confidence to know that Sprint in Halo Reach was severely limited, that we did not see the limits of Sprint in the gameplay reveal for Campaign Evolved, which for all we know is infinite, and that we do not really know what quirks will come from placing Reach AI into Combat Evolved enemy encounters, which are fundamentally different from Reach's enemy encounters due to a sizable number of factors. This includes quantity of enemies, types of enemies, enemy behavior, weapons available to the player, where said weapons are, weapons used by the enemies, positions of the enemies, and the terrain both parties are on, etc., etc. You do not simply counter Sprint by giving Combat Evolved enemies the behaviors of Halo Reach enemies, and thus it seems totally moot to argue in favor of Sprint in this Halo Combat Evolved remake. Again, this argument encounters changing what made the original game special in favor of homogenizing Halo with 1,000 other FPS titles that utilize the same mechanics. This shouldn't really even be a debate. Halo doesn't need an option to toggle Sprint on or off in a menu, but that is what they've thrown on to try and appease both parties, those in favor of Sprint and those who are not. Never mind the likelihood that it will be on by default, and the majority will simply leave it on. Halo Combat Evolved doesn't and should not have a sprint feature in its entirety. And this does not even include the other inevitable failures of a poorly implemented sprint in a Halo game devoid of sprint. Some such failures involve atmosphere, story beats, musical cues, and the general pacing of the game as a whole. Think upon levels which were handcrafted to have specific moments where the player comes across something new, something interesting, or something worth slowing down and having an honest look at. Imagine moments like this. Imagine how this would feel if the player was sprinting and running through the scenery, chasing after the objective, ignoring the moment. In the olden days, Bungie obviously did not account for the player being able to gun it at 45 miles per hour when they curated these instances that are supposed to help set the player up for the vibe of the level. Having sprint as an ever-present mechanic actively hamstrings the player's capability of taking in the environment. 343 Guilty Spark, as a level, for example, will lose much of its eerie atmosphere, much of the unease that starts from the moment the loading screen ends and the player is put in this jungle. For most of the game, you have gone guns blazing, fighting alongside friends and allies, kicking ass and mowing down big mean aliens, and suddenly it gets quiet. Too quiet.
Dug in at a large structure in a swamp. Can hold out, please. I will send this message to repeat at intervals.
You're meant to take it slow. Gather your bearings for where you are in this swampy biome unique to this one level, and maybe you just might notice the scouts in the distance running about in the trees, watching you. They don't look like anything you've ever seen before. Commonly, for most players, a tension builds here for a very intentional and vitally important setup that is critical to the overall story and its impacts on you, the player. It's not that sprint inherently removes these tense and uncertain feelings from occurring, but that it heavily incentivizes that innate probability on account of the fact that players like playing efficiently. Time is a commodity we do not enjoy wasting, even whilst playing video games. For new players coming to Halo, sprint will offer the strong illusion of not needing to waste their precious time walking around in a level. After all, why take in the intentional cues when you could be shorting the gap between shooty McShooter sections? Especially when sprint helps you fail to realize those cues were even there to begin with. Failing, of course, to realize that those gaps are filled with something else which most Halo players would agree is just as good, and some would go as far to even argue, better than just the plain gunfights, for they contextualize said gunfights with something somebody designed to be captivating. One might argue those original creatives were successful in that effect. It of course does not provide additional support when some of the gunfights themselves have effectively been neutered. This, we do not know for certain, will be present on all levels, and if it is, obviously it won't always be to the same degree, but we have one example that does not bode well for just how silly it is. Removing the big rock on Silent Cartographer to allow a warthog to traverse through it, specifically into an area the aforementioned rock was intentionally placed to prevent a warthog from traversing through, trivializing the iconic hunter encounter by incentivizing that you mow them down with a Gatling gun. Even more likely, you're not even the one on the gun, making this encounter as easy as killing a pack of grunts with a magnum. Good job, devs. Better yet, without the warthog, sprinting around these slow enemies may in fact be easier than patiently baiting their attacks. Oh, how careful you must be when playing the Halo Campaign Evolved campaign, given how much less strategy you must employ from level to level, I'm sure. If this is anything of a hint to tell us how encounters will be. It is the allure of a thing like a sprint mechanic making Halo a contemporary video game for the contemporary video gamer that hampers nearly every aspect of such an experience for how it was originally designed. There is clearly an attempt to cater to the many fans of the original, as noteworthy by the tiny details included in the remake, which only an experienced Halo player would be aware of. And yet, by haphazardly shoving Sprint into this tightly woven canvas, of which took a great amount of thought, effort, time, and revision to make, you tear a hole into the fabric, proving a lack of care for the art that was there before you, and that you claim that you wanted to be faithful to the original, of which I must say, I am receiving signals that are, at best, mixed. There is evidently a kind of divide amongst Halo studios as to what kind of project they think they're working on. If a modern Halo game is what you wanted to make, then perhaps you should have made a modern Halo game. Everyone knows that 5 years following Halo Infinite and many people are waiting for the next Halo experience. But no, you chose to work and allocate your resources and energy to making what I could most generously consider a modern adaptation of Halo Combat Evolved. Perhaps more so, a modern interpretation of the game. Hence, you bring forth the scrutiny of tired Halo players such as myself who are bored to death with watching our favorite toy be mistreated and put through an endless gauntlet of unsubtle misfortune. These subpar results have left me certifiably whelmed, one might say, for the upcoming release. When I look at this game for what it is as is shown, I am left reminded of samey things and samey mistakes I've already seen before. And of course, speaking of homogenizing Halo into things it's not, this brings us to the visual style the remake is going for. I will not be discussing this one for long because the finer details are less necessary when the broader details themselves are so freely misaligned. Halo, as an IP, once had an entirely unique, very visually appealing aesthetic, which most fans were so upset to see it go in Halo 4 and Halo 5 that Halo Infinite returned to it by way of apology. Bright, vibrant primary colors with distinct silhouettes, both of which pop out at you, such that you know exactly what enemies you're facing, what area you're in, and what faction created it. And better yet, some of the history or design philosophy of those that make it. The humans are robust and industrial. The Covenant is strongly alien with many curves and unique colors, featuring strong uses of purple, for instance. The Forerunners are ascetic and pragmatic, and storied with time and etchings into their ancient yet advanced walls. And yet, once more, here we are, regressing the steps that had been taken to restore that beloved standard. I've already shared my grievance about the Master Chief's muddied look, but I also feel that the Silent Cartographer looks much less alien and not like we are setting foot on a ring world of impossibly old age. It lacks the details, the growth and moss on the Forerunner architecture outside, favoring an overly shiny metal which looks as though someone is cleaning it every day and night in regular routine in case guests choose to visit. It should look visibly aged, weathered, but having withstood the tests of time. The original did that weathered look and did it presumably for that reason. By the way, there's your shiny metal, please use it for the Chief. It seems rather odd to replicate these designs and somehow overlook their details while adding such immense fidelity using the great Unreal Engine 5. These details are, without without a doubt, at least partial to cultivating the narrative experience which lasts 25 plus years and warrants a remaster and then a reboot. A shame, however, that both of those attempts to recapture the magic would be so haphazard, or downright bad, that you would willingly scrape away the details used to help craft a game so influential to an entire generation of gamers and then some, all for the sake of, my oh my, look at the shiny metal surface we made with our superpowered, totally well optimized game engine that you won't be able to run in 60 frames per second without frame gen, is a sin. Truly, if Halo Combat Evolved, a game from 25 years ago, managed to inspire me both as a writer and as a gamer, then Campaign Evolved has done neither thus far. Granted, I have not played the game, and I would be naive to act as if you can experience the same thing the same way twice. Obviously, my nostalgia is being baited. Your nostalgia is quite probably being baited as well, but all that can really be done is wait for the finished product and decide now or upon release whether it's worth your time, or if you'd rather boot up the Master Chief Collection again. I do have a great many doubts that any of the issues I've addressed will be paid any mind come full release, and I have about as many doubts, if not more, that Halo Studios will learn from their lessons following these mistakes. It's been about 15 years, why should we expect it to take 16 or 17? It does take, after all, an acknowledgement of these failings, which they have referenced but vaguely and merely once, but that really covers most of what I wanted to discuss with this conversation. While this video is not intended to help you decide whether or not this blurry revision of an iconic and classic video game is worthy of your money, it is intended to say this: Halo Campaign Evolved as a faithful adaptation by way of remake of the original Halo Combat Evolved, as is, will not do. That they would call it anything other than a glorified fan project with the official IP strapped to it might even be considered embarrassing. I have perhaps seen far more dubious and outrage-worthy things in other games, but as subpar works go, this one is anything but exciting. As a Halo player, as someone who thinks they enjoy Halo, as someone who still loves the classic Halos for all that they are and all that they represent, I am displeased. I am not excited. There, I said it. My opinion is now clear and clippable for critics to pick apart the precise most nature of my wording or my tone of voice, such as to call me a dumb idiot buffoon who doesn't understand the nuances of game development, and I can go do something else. If you've made it this far, you have my unceremonious gratitude in the form of an awkward thank you at the end of this rather long essay. You truly have traveled where few can return from, and for that, you are special. Whether that means you are gifted with rare strengths, or burdened with a need for mental repair, either now or before, I shall rightly allow you to decide for yourself. If you have anything to add to my criticisms or wish to criticize something I've said, please feel free to leave a comment. It does so help with engagement, and I don't mind indulging in a little discussion about things I'm willing to make videos on. I do, however, apologize for the 2-week hiatus between this and the previous upload. This was a larger project. Quite frankly, the biggest video I have chosen to tackle thus far on this channel, or ever, really, and I would appreciate that it did rather well. That being said, I won't be trying to do another just like it so soon, as I would like to try keeping uploads more frequent for a while. This just so happened to be a case I was particularly passionate about, as it pertained to one of the most influential IPs I've ever played. Halo is one of the larger reasons why I'm a writer, and why I try to understand the intricacies that go behind making these experiences which we so adore. This channel is becoming something about that general idea, and this video in particular, in complement to its girth, was coming off the backs of finals and the end of my semester's culmination in all my classes' busy work. Ideally, now that I am temporarily free, I should be able to post with a little more intent for a while, and a little more often. This time, I shall not tell you what the next video could be, because I intend not to make any false promises. It shall be a surprise, and hopefully a welcome one. Thank you for your time, for watching and or listening, and I will see you then.